Let me hit you with this straight, the loudest moment of my entire life wasn't a scream. It was the sound of an old leather passbook smacking cold marble, right in the middle of my wedding. That sound. Yeah. It still lives rent-free in my head. I'm Morgan, I'm 28. And 3 weeks ago my father humiliated my mother in front of 150 guests, then unknowingly exposed the biggest secret our family had ever buried. But before I tell you what was inside that passbook, you need to understand the kind of man my father is. Because this story didn't start at my wedding, it started decades earlier, inside a house where silence was survival. My dad, Richard Donovan, loves two things: looking successful and being right. He owns a mid-sized real estate company in Connecticut. Not billionaire money, but enough to flex. Mercedes in the driveway, Rolex on the wrist, country club energy. The kind of guy who drops his job title into casual conversation like it's his personality. Growing up in our 5-bedroom colonial in Greenwich, I learned early that success had a specific look in my father's eyes. And it didn't look like me. If you'd been born a boy, he told me once when I was 12, I'd have someone to hand the business to. I was standing right there. His only child. Apparently not enough. My mom, Helen, lived like a shadow in that house. She cooked. She cleaned. She smiled politely at dinner parties. She laughed at my father's jokes even when they weren't funny. Every morning, she went to her part-time job at the local library. A job my dad loved to trash. What do you even do there? He'd sneer. Organize books nobody reads, count dust. She never argued. Never defended herself. Just nodded, cleared the plates, and disappeared into the kitchen. And I hate admitting this, but back then, I thought she was weak. I thought her silence meant surrender. I was wrong. So painfully wrong. My dad had a motto. He said it like it was ancient wisdom. In this house, men decide. Women execute. He said it proudly. Like it made him powerful instead of cruel. And for a long time I believed him. I believed my mom had nothing. I believed she was nothing without him. Turns out, I didn't know a damn thing. Fast forward a few years, I meet Daniel Mercer on a random Tuesday in October, during a school field trip. I teach 3rd grade. Yes, the job my dad calls a waste of potential. I'm walking 23-8-year-olds through a construction site when I literally crash into the architect giving the tour. Daniel catches my arm before I eat concrete. Careful, he laughs. Hard hat zone. I wasn't wearing a hard hat. And yeah, neither was my heart. We dated for 2 years. 2 years of someone actually asking about my day. 2 years of being seen, not as an accessory, not as a RA booster, but as a person. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. And that's when my father suddenly became interested in my life. Daniel's family owns Mercer Development. Big money, quiet money. The kind of wealth that doesn't need to announce itself. When my dad found out who Daniel's father was, something flipped. Suddenly, he wanted to meet Daniel. Suddenly, he was calling me again. Suddenly, his daughter, the teacher, was making connections. 3 days after meeting the Mercers, my dad dropped the wedding. All of it. Venue, catering, flowers, everything. $80,000. This from a man who never spent more than $50 on my birthday. I should have been suspicious. But Daniel squeezed my hand and whispered, maybe he's trying to change. I wanted to believe that so badly. So I said yes. Within a week, my dad took over everything. Country club venue. Gold foil invitations that cost more than my rent. Guest list packed with his business buddies. People I barely knew. This is about connections, he said. Important people. Important to who? Sure as hell not me. The night before the invitations went out, my mom found me alone in the garden. She pressed something into my hand. I have a gift for you? She said softly. I'll give it to you on your wedding day. Her hands were shaking. It's the most important thing I have, she whispered. No matter what anyone says, remember that. I didn't understand then. But I would. As I stood in my childhood bedroom getting dressed, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 15. Homesick from school. I heard my mom counting money in her bedroom. Not much. A few $100s maybe. But she counted it like it mattered. When she saw me, she hid it fast. Just grown-up stuff. she said. I never asked about it again. Kids don't question survival strategies. And standing there in my wedding dress, wearing something my father chose, walking into a day that already felt wrong, I had no idea that everything was about to explode, because in just a few hours, that quiet little gift my mother saved for decades would hit the floor. And change all of our lives forever. If weddings were judged by appearances alone, mine would have been a magazine cover. Westbrook Country Club looked unreal that afternoon, like someone had photoshopped real life. White roses spilling out of crystal vases, silk ribbons tied to every chair, a string quartet playing Vivaldi near the fountain like we were in some rich people rom-com. And standing dead center of it all, my father. I watched him from the bridal suite window, pacing the lawn like a general before battle. Move that table. No, not there. Over there. Champagne tower goes by the fountain. People need to see it. He was wearing a brand new Tom Ford suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, new cufflinks flashing in the sun. The man looked expensive, powerful, important. He looked like he was auditioning. You know. My maid of honor Sarah whispered beside me. I've never seen your dad this involved. That was one word for it. The second the Mercer family's car pulled up, an understated black sedan, nothing flashy, I saw my father physically change. His shoulders straightened, his smile widened, his whole energy shifted. He practically jogged across the lawn before Daniel's father, Harold Mercer, even closed the car door. Harold! Catherine! Welcome. That voice, warm, smooth, friendly. I barely recognized it. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mom standing alone near the rose garden. She was wearing the champagne-colored dress my father picked, not the deep blue one she loved. Her smile looked painted on, like something she'd practiced in the mirror. She caught my eye through the window. For just a second, something passed between us. Sadness, understanding, maybe even resolve. Then my dad's voice boomed again. Let me give you the grand tour. And just like that, my mom's face went blank. I won't lie. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Standing at the altar with Daniel, his hands warm and steady in mine, felt real. That part was ours, untouched by politics or performance. I love you, he whispered as he slipped the ring on my finger. No matter what happens, remember that. I didn't know why he said it like that. Like a promise. Like a warning. The minister pronounced us married. We kissed. Applause erupted. I looked out at the crowd. My father was beaming, not at me, but at Harold Mercer. Already working the room. Already selling himself. And in the front row, my mother sat alone. Her eyes were red. Her hands clenched tight in her lap. She wasn't smiling. Mum's been crying all day. I murmured to Daniel as we walked back up the aisle. Wedding emotions, he said softly. Totally normal. But something in my chest said it wasn't. At cocktail hour, I watched my mom drift around the edges of conversations like she didn't belong at her own daughter's wedding. Every time she tried to engage my father, he brushed her off. Not now, Helen. 3 words, sharp, dismissive. She withdrew her hand slowly, like she'd learned how not to take up space. I should have gone to her then. I didn't. That regret still burns. By 8 p.m., my father was drunk. Not sloppy drunk, but loud drunk. The kind where stories get bigger and the truth gets flexible. I watched him corner Harold Mercer near the Champagne Tower. $15 million in revenue last year. My father bragged, waving his glass. Expanding into commercial real estate. Big things coming. I knew the truth. 3 million, maybe. Harold nodded politely, but I saw him glance at Catherine. That married couple look that says, yeah, okay. Your father seems very enthusiastic, Catherine said later, touching my arm gently. He's just excited, I said, forcing a smile. She smiled back. But her eyes said she already knew. What I didn't know then was that Harold had already researched my father's company. He knew exactly how inflated those numbers were. The performance wasn't fooling anyone. Then the MC took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the family gifts. This was my father's moment. He took the stage first. Of course. Daniel, Morgan, he said with practiced warmth. From the Donovan family, a gift for your future. He held up a thick Italian leather envelope. $50,000. Applause filled the room. I smiled. The same polite smile my mother taught me. Because I knew the truth. That money wasn't generosity. It was an investment. Harold Mercer stood next. No microphone, no speech. He handed Daniel a small Tiffany blue box. A key, he said simply. To a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. Catherine's grandmother's place. Silence. A brownstone in Brooklyn Heights was worth. I couldn't even calculate it. For a split second, my father's mask slipped. I saw it. The comparison hit him hard. How generous, he said tightly. And then the MC said the words that changed everything. And now, from the mother of the bride, Helen Donovan. My stomach dropped. My mother stood up, holding something small, worn, old, a faded blue leather passbook. I didn't know why, but my chest tightened. Something told me this wasn't going to end well. That's where I'll stop, because what my mother does next and what my father does in response will blow everything wide open. The room went quiet in that strange, expectant way, like everyone could feel something heavy coming, even if they didn't know what it was yet. My mother didn't take the microphone. She didn't need it. She walked slowly toward the head table, her steps careful, deliberate, like each one mattered. In her hands was that small, faded blue passbook. Soft at the edges, worn thin by time. "Morgan," she said. Her voice barely carried past the first row. "This is my gift to you." She pressed the passbook into my hands. It was lighter than I expected. Almost nothing. The gold lettering on the front, First National Bank, had mostly flaked away. "I don't understand," I whispered. "This is everything I have," she said quietly. "Everything I saved. I want you to have the freedom I never had." Freedom. The word hit me harder than the object itself. Around us, whispers started spreading. "A savings book? That's it? How old is that thing?" I didn't care. Something about the way my mom was looking at me, fierce, hopeful, terrified, made my throat close up. "Thank you, Mom," I said, pulling her into a hug. She held me tight. "Don't let anyone tell you it's worthless," she whispered in my ear. "Promise me?" "I promise," I said. I meant it. I just didn't know yet what I was promising to protect. "What is that supposed to be?" His chair scraped loudly against the floor. Too loudly, he wasn't smiling anymore. "Helen," he said, like her name tasted bad. "What the hell is that?" My mother didn't answer. She just stood there, hands folded, eyes down. He walked toward us fast, too fast. Before I could react, he yanked the passbook out of my hands. "A savings book." He laughed. Not a happy laugh, not even a drunk laugh. It was cruel. "You gave our daughter a savings book in front of the Mercers." "Richard, please," my mother said softly. 30 years, he snapped. His voice echoed off crystal and marble. 30 years of marriage, and this is what you contribute. And then, he threw it. The passbook hit the marble floor with a dull, awful sound and slid across the room, stopping near a rose arrangement. "Garbage belongs with garbage." The silence afterward was absolute. Forks frozen mid-air. Glasses half raised. The string quartet stopped playing. I saw Catherine Mercer inhale sharply. My mother stood there, tears streaming down her face, completely still, like she'd practiced for this moment her whole life. I apologized to our guests. My father continued loudly, turning to the room, for my wife's pathetic display. He straightened his jacket, smoothed his hair, smiled, as if nothing had happened. "I'm sorry," my mother whispered. She was apologizing to me. That's when something inside my chest cracked open. Daniel's hand found mine under the table. He was shaking, not from fear, but fury. "I'm going to?" he started. "Don't," I said quietly. I knew my father. If Daniel reacted, my father would become the victim. If Daniel yelled, my father would look reasonable. I wouldn't give him that. Across the room, Harold Mercer stood up. "Catherine," he said calmly. "I think we should leave." "Yes," Catherine replied instantly. My father's smile twitched. "This is just a family matter," he said quickly. Harold's voice was ice. "I've seen enough to know exactly what kind of man you are." They gathered their things, and there it was. The moment my father realized he'd gone too far. But it was already done. I stood up. Daniel looked at me, worried. "Trust me?" I whispered. I stood. Every eye in the room tracked me as I stepped away from the table. My heels clicked against the marble. Slow, steady. I walked past my father without looking at him. I knelt down and picked up the passbook. One corner was bent. I brushed it off gently, like it mattered. Because it did. Then I walked to my mother. "Thank you," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This is the most meaningful gift I've ever received." I kissed her cheek. She was trembling. Then I turned to Daniel. "We're leaving. What do you think you're doing?" My father snapped. "I don't need your permission," I said calmly, "and I don't need your approval." Daniel took my hand. We walked out. Behind us, my father kept shouting. I didn't hear a word, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't listening. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights was silent. Too silent. Daniel ordered Thai food we barely touched. I sat by the window, still in my wedding dress, watching city lights smear across the glass like watercolor. The veil lay forgotten on the couch. The heels were kicked off somewhere near the door. Between us, on the cushion, sat the passbook. That tiny, worn thing my father called garbage. "You don't have to look at it tonight," Daniel said gently. "Whatever's in there can wait." "I know," I said. But my fingers kept drifting back to it, tracing the cracked leather. The faded gold letters. It didn't feel worthless. It felt intentional. "She stayed?" I said suddenly. Daniel looked at me. "Who?" "My mom. All those years. She stayed for me." "You don't know that for sure." I did. The way she'd looked at me at the wedding, the way she said freedom, the way she apologized when she had nothing to apologize for. She wasn't weak. She was waiting. My phone started buzzing at 6 a.m., 17 missed calls. All from my father. The voicemails jumped from rage to panic like a broken metronome. "You humiliated me. I'm cutting you out of the will. Sweetheart, your dad had too much champagne. You ungrateful." I stopped listening. Daniel watched quietly as I blocked the number. Then my mom texted, short, careful, like every word had been weighed. "Go to First National Bank, Greenwich branch. Ask for Mr. Thomas Patterson. Show him the passbook. He'll explain everything. I love you more than you know." Daniel frowned. "What do you think it means?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Inside the passbook, the last recorded balance was under $1,000. Nord 847, not nothing, but not life-changing, and yet, my mom had called it everything. So we went. First National Bank looked old money serious. Stone columns, brass fixtures. The kind of place my father wanted to belong to but never quite did. Inside, the air smelled like leather and history. I slid the passbook across the counter. "I'd like to check the balance." The teller, Emily, typed in the account number. Then her face changed. Her fingers stopped. She looked at the screen. Then at me, then back again. Could you excuse me for one moment?" She disappeared through a back door. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Okay," he said slowly, "that's not normal." A minute later, a silver-haired man in a three-piece suit emerged. "Mrs. Mercer," he said calmly. "I'm Thomas Patterson, branch manager, please come with me." He paused. "And please, don't leave." Private banking looked like another world. Persian rugs, oil paintings, leather chairs that probably cost more than my car. Mr. Patterson sat down, opened the passbook carefully, and typed again. He stared at the screen for a long moment. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. "A savings account?" I said. He shook his head. "This passbook is the key to a trust." My breath caught. "A trust established 25 years ago. Your mother is the settlor. You've been the beneficiary since birth." He turned the screen toward me. The number didn't make sense at first. 200-437-89341. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "What? $2.1 million? He said gently. The room tilted. My mother, my quiet, overlooked mother. She'd been building my freedom for 25 years, right under my father's nose. "Mr. Patterson slid an envelope across the desk. She asked that this be opened only when you came." My hands shook as I broke the seal. "My dearest Morgan, if you're reading this, you found your freedom. This money is yours. Not your father's. Not any man's. I stayed so you could grow safely. I was never trapped. I was preparing. All my love, Mom." I was crying before I finished reading. "She wasn't weak," I whispered. Daniel wrapped his arm around me. "She was playing the long game. There's something else, Mr. Patterson said carefully. Your parents have had a legal separation agreement for 20 years. I stared at him. She stayed, he continued, until you were grown, until you were safe. 20 years. Living with a man who thought she was nothing, while quietly protecting everything that mattered. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. Did you go to the bank? Mom, I sobbed. Why didn't you tell me? Because children shouldn't carry their parents' secrets, she said softly. And because now it's time. Time for what? To leave. I want to leave. My mother's words didn't sound dramatic. They didn't shake, they landed soft, but final. Like a door closing that had been open too long. I've already spoken to my lawyer, she continued. The divorce papers are ready. They've been ready for years. Years. That word echoed in my head. You planned this? I asked. I prepared, she corrected gently. There's a difference. And suddenly, everything made sense. I have an apartment, she said. Small. Near the library in New Haven. I've been renting it for 2 years. 2 years, while still cooking his meals. Still smiling at his parties. Still being dismissed. I didn't want to leave until you were safe, she said. Until you were grown. Married. Free of his control. I covered my mouth with my hand. All those years. I whispered. You stayed because of me. No, sweetheart, she said softly. I stayed for you, but I wasn't suffering. I was investing. That word again. Investing. I wasn't there when my father walked in early that evening. But my mother told me later. Calmly, like she was reading from a weather report. He came home and found me packing, she said. Samsonite suitcase open on the bed. Clothes folded neatly. What the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded. I'm leaving, Richard. She didn't look at him when she said it. I filed for divorce. You'll be served this week. He laughed. That sharp, dismissive laugh I knew too well. With what money? He sneered. You've never had anything. She folded another sweater. We've been legally separated for 20 years, she said calmly. I have my own assets, my own lawyer, my own future. That's impossible, he snapped. I would have known. You never asked, she said. That one sentence hit him harder than any scream could have. You'll come crawling back. He spat. You don't have a penny to your name. She closed the suitcase. Click. That sound, the opposite of the passbook hitting the floor. Final. Goodbye. Richard, she said. I hope you find what you're looking for in other people's admiration. Because you won't find it in your family anymore. And she walked out. 30 years of marriage ended without yelling, without begging, without fear. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. My phone rang that night at 9:07 p.m. I'd unblocked my father's number. Not because I wanted to talk, but because I wanted to hear it. Morgan, he said, breath ragged. What did you do? Nothing, I said calmly. Mom made her own choice. She said she has money, he snapped. That's impossible. You gave it to her, didn't you? You and that Mercer family. This isn't about the Mercers, I said. And it's not about me. Silence. She can't do this, he finally said. Talk to her. Tell her I'll change. You had 30 years? I replied. 30 years to treat her like a human being. Morgan, he said, his voice hardening. I'm your father. Yes, I said. And I don't owe you my mother's life. He threatened to cut me out of the will. I laughed. I don't need anything from you anymore, I said. And meant it. I hung up, blocked the number again. The sky didn't fall. 2 weeks later, Daniel and I were hosting dinner. Quiet night, lasagna, candles. Peace. The doorbell rang. I knew. My father stood there holding flowers and a bottle of wine. Plastered smile. Just 5 minutes, he said. I want to apologize. Behind me, Daniel stood up. Behind him, Harold Mercer appeared. My father froze. Harold's voice was cold. I watched you humiliate your wife in front of 150 people, he said. That wasn't alcohol. That was character. My father snapped. She's been useless for 30 years. Daniel stepped forward. You need to leave. And for the first time, my father had nowhere to turn. No leverage, no performance, no audience that believed him. The door closed. And with it, every illusion he'd built. The fallout wasn't loud, it was quiet. Meetings that never happened. Calls that weren't returned. Doors that closed without explanation. My father wasn't ruined, but the world he wanted access to, gone. And my mother, she bloomed. Short hair. Yellow walls. Real laughter. I forgot what it feels like. She told me once, to make a decision without defending it. She started writing her story. And for the first time, she wasn't invisible. People kept asking me the same question. What are you going to do with the money? They said it like it was a riddle, like there was only one correct answer. Quit your job, disappear, flex quietly. $2 million changes a lot of things. But here's what it didn't change. I still woke up every weekday at 6:30 a.m., still packed my lunch, still drove to Riverside Elementary. I kept teaching third grade, and that confused people. You could do anything now, my friend Sarah said, staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Travel. Start a business. Buy a beach house. I laughed. What would I do with a beach house? I asked. She didn't get it. But I did. I didn't become a teacher because I lacked options. I became one because it mattered to me. Every day, I watched 8-year-olds realize they were capable of more than they thought. How could I walk away from that? Money didn't give me a new identity. It gave me freedom to stay myself. Daniel and I met with a financial advisor. Not to grow the money, but to give it purpose. That's when we created the Margaret Wilson Education Fund. Named after my grandmother. 5 scholarships a year for students from low-income families. Why not name it after you? Daniel asked gently. Because this didn't start with me, I said. It started with a woman who saved in silence. My mom moved fully into her New Haven apartment. She cut her hair short, something my father had banned for 30 years. Painted the walls yellow, her favorite color, the one he called tacky. She volunteered at the library again, not for money, for joy. I forgot who I was, she admitted one afternoon. I forgot I was allowed to like things. She finished her memoir. Didn't chase fame. Didn't care about sales. But letters started coming in, from women who recognized themselves in her story. If it helped even one person, she said, holding a letter with shaking hands, it was worth it. He still called sometimes. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays fueled by regret and scotch. I didn't answer. I didn't block him either. Distance isn't punishment. It's protection. Will you ever forgive him? Daniel asked me once. I thought about it. Forgiveness isn't letting someone hurt you again, I said. It's letting go without reopening the door. That answer felt true. 3 years later, I'm sitting in my kitchen watching my daughter eat scrambled eggs. Her name is Margaret. Maggie. She has Daniel's eyes and my mother's stubborn chin. My mom is here too, helping Maggie figure out forks like it's advanced engineering. Daniel's making coffee, humming. The scholarship fund has helped 43 students so far. One of them sent me a letter last year. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I framed it. It hangs in my classroom. The passbook sits in a frame in our living room now. Faded, cracked, easy to overlook. Visitors ask about it. How much was in it? They say. That's never the part I lead with. Because the real value wasn't the number. It was the patience. The preparation. The love expressed quietly, consistently, invisibly. My father thought power came from being loud. From being admired. From being feared. My mother taught me something better. Power is planning. Power is persistence. Power is protecting what matters, without needing applause. For a long time, I thought strength had a certain sound. My father's voice. Booming, confident, impossible to ignore. The way he filled rooms. The way people listened when he spoke. I thought that was power. I was wrong. Growing up, my mother's quiet scared me. I thought it meant she had nothing to say. That she'd accepted her place. That she didn't know how to fight. But silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's preparation happening so quietly that the people benefiting from your exhaustion never notice. My mother wasn't weak, she was disciplined. Every month, every year, every invisible choice. While my father performed, she built. Walking out of my wedding reception felt like jumping off a cliff. I'd spent my whole life trying to manage my father's emotions. Don't embarrass him. Don't upset him. Don't challenge him in public. But the moment I picked up that passbook, something shifted. For the first time, I chose dignity over approval. And here's the wild part: the world didn't punish me for it. No lightning strike, no collapse, no disaster, just relief. People like my father don't actually want control, they want compliance. They want applause without accountability, respect without kindness, love without effort. And the moment you stop performing for them, they panic, because their power only exists if you believe in it. If you've ever been told you're too quiet, too soft, too patient, too slow, listen to me. Quiet people change lives all the time. Not with noise, with consistency, with plans no one else sees, with choices that don't look impressive, until one day they do. She told me something recently that I can't stop thinking about. I didn't need him to underestimate me, she said. I just needed him not to notice. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need to prove anything to someone who refuses to see you. Sometimes the most powerful move is stepping back and letting time do its work, because time rewards discipline. Time rewards patience. Time rewards quiet builders. I don't hate him. I understand him, and that understanding is exactly why I keep my distance. Love doesn't mean access. Family doesn't mean tolerance. And forgiveness doesn't require forgetting what someone showed you when they thought no one important was watching. Years from now, people won't remember the number. They'll remember the moment. The sound of a room going quiet. The look on a man's face when certainty leaves him. The realization that the story he told about someone was wrong. That's what the passbook really did. It told the truth. We grow up believing power looks a certain way. Loud voices, big personalities, public wins. We're taught that the people who talk the most must know the most. That confidence equals competence. That silence equals surrender. But real life doesn't work like that. Real life rewards the long game. That old, worn passbook wasn't just paper and ink. It was every time my mother swallowed a comment. Every time she chose discipline over drama. Every time she made a smart decision that no one applauded. It was proof that preparation beats performance. That endurance outlasts ego. This story isn't about money. It's about underestimated people. It's about the ones who get talked over. The ones who get laughed at. The ones who are told they're lucky someone puts up with them. It's about people who look small until the moment they stand up. Let me say this clearly: being overlooked is not a curse. It's camouflage. While others waste energy being seen, you can be building something real. Something solid. Something lasting. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your quiet. You don't owe anyone a performance. You owe yourself a future. My father lost something that night. Not money, relevance, authority, the illusion that his voice was the only one that mattered. My mother gained something far more valuable. Freedom. I gained clarity. I learned that strength doesn't always announce itself. That dignity doesn't need witnesses, and that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one everyone ignores. So here's the question. What are you building while no one is paying attention? What are you preparing for quietly? What would surprise people if they really knew? Because one day, the room will go silent. One day the truth will surface. And one day, someone who underestimated you will realize they were never watching closely enough. The balance was never about money, it was about patience. About preparation. About knowing your worth long before anyone else did. And when the moment comes, you won't need to say a word.